Hey everyone, welcome back to Cyber US History. So this week we're going to start World War II. And in order to do so, we need to kind of put things in context and go back to the rise of Hitler. We're going to look at the rise of Mussolini, the Hirohito, some of the leaders during this time in order to get context and understanding. So as we go through this, just make sure you're following along here. We're going to start with Hitler and how this sort of comes about. The question students always have, been teaching this now for 22 years, is, how would a country of millions and millions of people rally behind a madman? And really, there's no great answer to that, but we can at least look at why he comes to power, how he comes to power, and try to gain an understanding. So he's born on April 20th, 1889 in Austria, which is, again, neighbors to Germany. Had a close relationship with his mother, who dies from cancer in 1908. So it's during this time period that Hitler sort of is lost, and he ends up leaving home, dropping out of high school, and goes to Vienna to become an artist of all things. And Vienna during that time, guys, I try to explain it, it's the cultural hub of Europe in the early 1900s, very similar to, say, like a New York City today. So, but he lives on the streets of Vienna for about 5 years or so and becomes very bitter. It's during this time period that Hitler most likely formulates his views and his hatred towards Jews. While on the streets of Vienna, he blames not getting into the art school on the Jews. He blames all societal problems on the Jews in Vienna during that time period, things like prostitution, banking system, and he views that as Jews are corrupt and taking advantage financially of those that are weak. So again, there's a lot to dive in there, but for the sake of time, just understand that it's during this time period that Hitler really becomes bitter. He peddles his artwork. There's a piece of his artwork there. Unfortunately, from time to time, you see his artwork go up for auction, and why somebody would want to buy it is beyond me. But so it's during that time period he's peddling his artwork to try to get by and manage to get by. So in that, with that, World War I breaks out in 1914, and he joins the German army. He's a messenger for the German army, and he wins the Iron Cross. During this time, he's part of a gas attack, which partially blinds him, temporarily blinds him, I should say. And he's sent to the back lines in the field hospital, at which time he learns of German surrender, and he cannot handle that the Germans not only surrendered but fully surrendered, to the point of giving in to an entire Treaty of Versailles, which really blames Germany for the war itself and puts these harsh conditions upon Germany. If you recall, we talked about the Treaty of Versailles and the harsh reparations that were placed upon Germany, amongst some other penalties, right? So what we're going to see is that comes up here, guys, in the near future. Hitler's going to go back against that treaty and sort of rips it apart, so to speak. So when he returns after the war, Germany is sort of in flux with no real leadership. So what they're trying to do is they had a parliamentary system, and the Communist Party was actually gaining ground. And so there's this, I guess, this period of turmoil of no real leadership in Germany. And so Hitler is given the task from the army to go listen to these various political parties and on behalf of the army. And so he goes and listens to the National Socialist Workers' Party, Germany's Workers' Party, which is also known today as the Nazi Party. And he ends up becoming one of their leaders. So with this, you see the swastika on the screen there. Ultimately, Hitler then creates a flag, and he takes an old ancient Aryan symbol and twists it. And that's where we get the modern day swastika. So it's also during this time period, guys, that Hitler realizes he is a great public speaker and becomes known for that. So Again, he envisions this purified Aryan race. The Aryans, just for context, were the original Germanic tribe that then migrated out of Germany, and he wanted to get back to that quote unquote purified Aryan race that he saw the pure Germans. Right. He blames the Jews for all the problems in Germany. Um, and again, that manifests itself once he becomes chancellor. So in 1923, he thinks he's got enough political clout to try to overthrow the local government in Munich. He storms this beer hall. It's known as the Beer Hall Putsch, where Hitler is actually injured. And this is another what if moment for Hitler. There's a bunch of them, but Hitler had contemplated suicide after this. But either way, he's thrown into prison. Now, the court trial becomes a sham. Hitler gets up and gives his speech during the trial. He's up for treason, which he should be executed for. But he has so much, I guess, this cult following that as he is delivering this speech, there's actually a standing ovation when he's done speaking in his own defense trial after 3 hours. So he's sentenced to prison for 5 years, but he only serves 5 months. And it's during that time that he writes Mein Kampf, which is translated as My Struggle. It's this 800-page manifesto about his philosophy and what, everything he does after he becomes Chancellor of Germany is sort of laid out in Mein Kampf. But again, guys, it's the early 1920s. Nobody's really paying attention to this guy over in Germany in 1923. So Mein Kampf, in that, it talks about this idea of Lebensraum. So when we talk about why did Hitler want to keep expanding, he's looking for space to establish this Third Reich, right, was his goal. And it was laced with anti-Semitism, which again means anti-Jewish, right? And over 5 million copies were sold by 1939. So again, it's sort of his manifesto, so to speak. So what causes Hitler to come to power is a big question, right? So when the Great Depression hits, Hitler's Nazi party started gaining more and more seats in the parliament where they had control over the parliament. If things didn't go in their direction, the Nazi party would stand up and walk out of these votes. So he ultimately ends up controlling parliament, or the Reichstag, right, the parliament building. And they ultimately name him chancellor, which is sort of the, if you want to consider it for lack of a better term, almost like vice president, right, in 1933. And it's from there that he starts passing a series of laws that restrict rights, in particular Jewish rights, right? So it's really the economic side of things that leads Hitler to gaining power, right? Because he is providing jobs, he's providing hope at a time where Germany was in a desperate situation post World War I, and then of course during the Great Depression. So he's named chancellor in 33, and from that he starts his concentration camps in 1933. At first, they start out as political camps, so not in the way we think of Auschwitz, right? But more so, any political opponent was thrown in prison, and really that's how concentration camps like Dachau started out. All right, so it's basically from there downhill. So Hitler then plans for this Third Reich. He builds up the Luftwaffe, which he wasn't supposed to. He goes in and liberates, quote unquote, liberates Austria, the Anschluss, which he wasn't supposed to do with the Treaty of Versailles. So we're going to see all of that in the coming weeks about how he sort of goes and defies the treaty. He puts a military presence in the Rhineland, that area between Germany and France, which he was forbidden to do. He does it anyway. Why is he able to do all this? There is no United Nations yet. So what we have in place is the League of Nations, which has no power, and the U.S. is not even a part of. So nobody's doing anything and sitting back, and we're going to look at that. That's the next week's lesson, is to look at appeasement. When we appease somebody, we give them what they want, hoping that they will calm down or go away. In this case, Hitler is appeased by giving him what he wants continually, and obviously it doesn't go away. So that leads to the start of the war. The start of the war begins September 1st, 1939, when Germany unexpectedly advances into Poland and makes an agreement with the Russians to advance from the other side into Poland. But again, we'll get to that down the road. All right. All right, guys. See you soon.